The comments heard on The View from A Pew are those of Mac McCoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View from A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from A Pew.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good day. I'm Mac McCoy, and this is The View from A Pew. We are live here on the radio, your local radio station, but most of our content you're probably watching or listening on one of 27, 28 pod sites that we're on. And by the way, don't give me any credit for that. That's my producer, Garth. I can't do any of that stuff, and thanks to him, I don't have to learn it. But he's the one that gets us on all these places, including YouTube, because, yes, there's a visual component to the View from A Pew. And now, beginning in 2024, we have a Roku channel. Any of these programs at any time, all you have to do is search for The View from A Pew, The View from A Pew. And the reason I say it that way, there's several other ministries out there, and we all know each other, and it's some version of that same thing. Ours is The View from A Pew. You search for that, and you'll get all the programs. All right, my guests today are Michael and Sheri from Next24, and we're going through a part of a Bible study that we're in, and it's a study on 70 times 7. That's the name of it. 70, capital X 7. And it's the process, the biblical process of how we forgive. And you said it earlier today, Sheri. You said, "Oh, forgive me." Okay, I'll forgive you. That's not it.
Right. And it's,
saying
all that is just, it's just words.
Yeah. One of my least favorite Bible verses is John 3:16. And everybody says, how can that be one of your least favorites? Because it said basically all you got to do is believe in me and you'll have everlasting life. Mm-hmm. The devil believes in him. Mm-hmm. It's got to be more than believe. Mm-hmm. And it is. If you go to Greek and Hebrew, in Greek, believe means follow. And in Hebrew, it means something like disciple. So if you become one of his disciples, then you will have that everlasting life. Mm. And it's the same way sometimes with forgiveness. All right, I forgive you. That's not a word to throw around. Here's another. There's 3 words that I think we throw around too much. Forgiveness and the word I love you. Mm. I love you means I love you. Mm-hmm. The third one is promise. Don't worry, I promise. Mm. And in my book, my latest book, I talk about a shoe shine guy that I would stop and see every day when I rode my bike home from school down in Beatrice. And one day I overheard something from the guy sitting on the stand, the shoe shine stand. And after it was over, Charlie, Bones, it was his nickname, said to me, now, you got to promise that you're not going to repeat that to anybody. And I said, I promise. And he stopped me. He said, do you know what the definition of promise is? Yeah, I'm going to make sure I don't do that again. So when you say I promise, do you think for a moment, can I really promise that? Can I really say to you, if the weather changes, the world falls apart, I still promise you blank. Mm-hmm. And forgiveness, it's all tied into one. All right, so we're going to try to get through these in our session. This is a curriculum called 70 times 7 from Bruce Wilkinson, and it's the stages in the slide, and that's not the visual slide you see on social media or when Grandma gets out all the slideshows. It's the stage in the process of unforgiveness. First one is unforgiveness, to harbor ill feelings to the person for their hurtful attitude and actions. And now we've come to number 2, Michael.
Yep. Stage 2 is anger, and to feel displeasure, hostility, and antagonism, to harbor strong negative feelings.
All right. And what is the consequences of that, Sheri?
The consequences are, as time progresses, your unforgiveness slides into feelings of anger. Sometimes you even lose your temper towards them or even someone else who reminds you of them. You have to calm yourself when they are nearby to hide your anger. And I think, Mac, that this statement also people don't realize, if you've heard the phrase kick the dog syndrome,
Yeah.
where you take it out on somebody else
Yep.
because you have forgiveness from somebody else.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, we use the term triggered, and it usually is linked to mental illness. Well, God would tell you that unforgiveness is a mental issue. I taught you what to do. I showed you the example. I told you what the benefits were. Now you need to understand the consequences of unforgiveness. All right, let's move to number 3, stage 3, Michael.
Stage 3, bitterness. To have sharp negative emotions. Cynicism. To be harsh, callous, and untrusting.
And the consequences.
Is that if you close your heart completely toward the other person, you are easily irritated, frustrated, and have lost your peace. You no longer trust the person and start becoming sullen, withdrawn, and hard. You put impenetrable walls around your heart. And I think that we see this a lot in society today, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael, you mentioned when we were off microphone that what happens if you can't forgive the world? And there's a process for that too.
Yeah.
Forgiveness isn't just for a person, it is for the process also. We live in a political time right now that it's really hard to forgive. And I don't care what side of the fence you're on. Everybody's over, what do they call that? Hard. They're not working with each other. And truly, that's not the way you run a country. So anyway. All right, now we get into stage 4. And by the way, if you're not writing these down or want to look more at this, go to Amazon and look up 70 times 7, 70 capital X 7, and you can order this book, and I think it's $10. And then you can go through one of our classes that we have. And I have a new one of these coming in September on Thursday nights, and so at my church. So if you would like to enroll in this class, there's no cost. You just need to buy the book, and it's about an hour and a half a week for 8 to 9 weeks. All right, so we're now at stage 4.
Okay, stage 4 is slander. To communicate, to defame, and to damage another's reputation, gossip, and rumor.
Gossip. Gossip. That is a poison.
Oh, terrible.
Well, you know what I heard? Blah, 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 blah. My comeback is, who'd you hear it from? Well, it doesn't matter. It matters everything.
Yes.
The source. It's the same as when we read the Bible. We need to know who it was that wrote it, who was the verse or the book written for. That's why Romans is called Romans. Paul wrote that letter to the Romans so the Romans would understand who Jesus was and what he stood for. All right, so you want to give us the consequences of slander.
Yep. You find yourself talking down about the person who wounded you, and you're glad when you hear their suffering. You misread the other person's motives because you can't trust them, and tell others not to trust them either. You gossip about them. That's a big one, and I don't think people realize, I didn't, that slander was gossiping.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's the other thing I'll add to that. Reputation. Your reputation is what other people say about you. And most usually that comes from gossip. Some people do have a good reputation. Most people, because of gossip, well, I challenge that reputation, This is what happened there and there and there, so...
And I think for me, one of the bigger takeaways was that you almost, when they're suffering and you see that they're suffering, you almost delight in it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah,
Well,
get him, God.
If you noticed in stage 4, and there will be another one later on, so far with unforgiveness, anger, and bitterness, there's nothing against the law. Slander's against the law. If I slander you, you can take me to court.
Yep.
And so man, even without Jesus, has adopted this idea that if you say something that isn't true about somebody, it can catch up with you within the land, within the law. Heaven knows what will happen to you in God's world. All right, so now we'll go to stage 5. Did you read the consequence? Okay, so stage 5.
Stage 5 is resentment. To have a deep-seated critical attitude toward a person. to repeatedly rehearse past offenses.
All right. The thing I want to underline there before you get to the consequences, to repeatedly rehearse the past offenses. Oh, I forgave you, but man, when that one topic comes up, I'm going to throw it back in your face because I want to remind you what you did. That's not forgiveness.
You know, that reminds me of when people say they have the movie in their head.
Yeah.
And then play it over and over.
That's
and
right.
over.
And resentment, that leads to alcohol abuse, drug abuse. It leads to all kinds of abuse that you do to your own body because your body was not built to hold resentments. No. Resentments are held in your heart, and what God built that heart for was a place for Him and the Holy Spirit to live. All right, what are the consequences of resentments?
You keep track of all the mistakes and unkind actions of the other person, building a whole case why they cannot be trusted. You link all previous negatives about the person into a well-worn list that gets longer and longer. Your bitterness deepens, and you can't find anything good about the person.
Now, I'm going to throw you a curve, and we didn't talk about this before. Is that okay that I can't find any good about that person? Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a liar to myself. I still see the crappy polls or she polls, but I'm going to forgive them. And therefore, I'm not going to repeat what I think is bad about that person.
Oh, that's good, Matt.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really good.
Yeah. So if you want to carry a resentment after you've forgiven somebody, why would you do that? You know, you don't have to do that. You've already been forgiven. Shut up. If you continue to throw it in their face, you have not forgiven them. All right, now we're going to get to a couple tough ones. Stage 6, Michael.
Stage 6 is hatred, to dislike intensely or passionately, to feel extreme hostility toward, to detest, or to avoid contact.
All right, Sheri, the consequence.
You dread being with the person, even seeing them in a store upsets you. You now have so many reasons to dislike and not trust them that you don't want anything to do with them. You avoid them, and just the thought of them sets your emotions on end. They are your enemy, and you hate them. And once again, we went through this yesterday, but this just now, reading it again, occurred to me that, and you had said it earlier, I believe on slide 2, in stage 2, but this is kind of where you start getting into the mental illness issues. Where, I mean, not all PTSD is military induced.
Right. Oh, yeah.
There's a lot that comes from things that were done to you in your life, sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, all the abuses. And you get to the point where certain things will, and you use the word trigger.
Yeah.
To trigger you. And then, if you haven't forgiven them, then that all starts flowing back.
Well, and that's exactly right, Sheri. By the way, Michael and Sheri are here with me today on these teachings. Their ministry is called Next24. How do they find that ministry?
You can go to the website at www.nxt24book.com, and it gives us our website. We're also on Facebook. It's a Next24 Personal Development. You can also find us at YouTube. And our purpose or goal is, we realized over the years, we just want to get people to start gathering again, start talking and sharing.
All right, back to the hatred thing. I remember I was facilitating this class once, and before I started session 3, I said, I want you to write down somebody you hate. Don't show it to anybody. It's not public. Write down somebody you hate. And then we get to stage 6, and it tells you where that hatred comes from and what it does. I can honestly tell you that I no longer hate anyone. And when I'm about to think that way, I stop and remember what Jesus said. The only thing in the Bible that God hates is what? Divorce. That's the only thing God hates. And He doesn't hate that that a man and a woman cannot get along anymore. It's the consequence of what it does to the families. Both families, children, great-grandchildren,
Even the husband and wife.
Yeah. So try not to hate anybody. And I even don't say things like, man, I hate that commercial, or I hate that food. I just try to take that word out of my vocabulary. All right, so these are the stages of unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is stage 1. Then you get angry. Then you become bitter. Then you start talking about the person in a negative, lying way. That's called slander. Stage 5 is resentments. It's when you hold and hold and hold and hold, and you throw it back in their face. 6 is hatred, to dislike so intensely that you could kill them. You could avoid contact forever. But now we get to the 7th one. And when you've gotten to this point, you should be forgiving no matter what it takes. Michael?
Yeah, stage 7 is vengeance. To desire to get even, to inflict harm, to humiliate, to inflict punishment, or require retribution.
And the consequences of that emotion, Sheri?
Your inner desire to make them pay for what they've done builds to the point that you take action. You wish them evil or curse them. You don't want anything good to happen to them, so no blessings. You may even try to hurt them in various ways, even physically. You may even wish that they were dead or kill them yourself. And I think in our society, especially over the past, especially maybe the past 5 to 10 years, we are seeing more and more of that. The thing that breaks my heart, I'm seeing news articles about parents that are killing their children.
Yep.
But I mean, every day you can pull up the local news. You can pull up the local news in any small town in Nebraska.
Every day at 5 o'clock on the news, somebody shot somebody dead.
Yes. Or physically assaulted them or, was trying to kill them.
And remember, if you're a follower of Jesus, then you know that you don't have to get vengeance. God will do that for you. He promises that in the Bible. When you don't allow him to implement his vengeance, you're not following Jesus. It's not an unforgivable sin. It's not a sin that will never keep you, or that will keep you out of God's grace for eternity. But it is a sin to do that. All right, guys, thank you very much for coming in on this. I would invite anyone who wants to start their own study of this. You can do that. You can go to Amazon or go to Divine Truth Christian Bookstore in Omaha and buy these books. They're called 70 times 7. And you can also follow the video teachings on YouTube. Once again, no cost, 70 times 7. Now, the videos are really good teachings, but I'll tell you that the power of these classes that we do is the conversation we have for the next hour after the video's over. So if you think you can learn what you need to learn by listening to the TV or the videos, go ahead and try. That's all right. If you want to go one step further, order the book so you can fill out everything in there. That's fine. But it's when other people hold us accountable for the things that we say we forgive for or don't forgive for. I appreciate you taking the time to listen today. We are The View from a Pew. I'll say that again, The View from a Pew. And if you'd like to email me, love to hear from you. It's Mac, M-A-C like macaroni, at theviewfromapew.com. And until I see you again, if you don't see me and you can't find me, find Jesus, because I'll be with him.
Divine Truth Christian Store, where you'll find